What's up, everyone? It's Eddie from Eddy's Emporium. Hello, you beautiful souls. It is the 22nd of October, episode 14 of the Beyond the Booster vlog. And we're here. I've got a sore head. I went out this weekend, had a bit too much J2Os, and I'm old, and apparently my recovery time is very, very bad now. So this might be slow, this might be long, I might waffle, who knows. But first and foremost, quite like last week, happy birthday, Henry. It's my other brother's, the youngest brother's birthday. He is 22 on the 22nd, so I hope you had a lovely, lovely weekend, making me have a sore head, because that's who I was with, having a drink. He has the fleeting youth that I had. I'm no longer a spring chicken. He has been laughing at me all week, so hope it was worth it. So obviously, in terms of the business, sales has slowed down a tiny bit. I think that's to be expected, though, because we've got quite a saturated market with all the releases that have came out, you know, One Piece, Pokemon, Weiss, and so on and so forth. So there is actually probably quite a lot to choose from, and that paired with people prepping for Christmas. We've just had obviously the Prime Day, you got Black Friday coming up. There is some other kind of external factors obviously impacting, I think, everyone's shopping at the moment. Obviously Cosy lives and everything like that. Obviously we're at payday, middle of the month, it's always quieter. People obviously waiting till the end of the month to get paid, but you know what, that's twos and fro's. So in other news, while there hasn't been too much in the way of orders, it's given me a lot of wiggle room to get through and start doing some of the admin work that obviously heavy orders, releases, and all the in-between stuff had took up. So I finally added all the graded cards to my store, so you'll be able to have a look, browse, and see what really cool items I've got there. I quite pride myself on this part here. I wanted to create an accessible pricing format for people, so rather than just try and look for the expensive cards that will cost an arm and a leg to get, that I know everyone wants that are in your grail, I want to be able to create accessible slabs for people. I think that is really important for parents of collectors, budget oriented collectors like myself. I'm a big budget oriented collector. I don't like spending thousands on a card, hundreds even. It's not the way I was raised. I don't come from that kind of background where I've had that sort of money. So I think it's really important that I bring that opportunity and accessibility into the business. So I created a Slabs Under 30 section on my website. Put a little screenshot here, and I will always be looking to expand into other areas and formats in which I can kind of make it accessible, because I want Eddy's Emporium to build up a brand around the community, not just money. This isn't just sales, otherwise I'd have an eBay store, or worst case the scalper word. It's not something I want. I want something that I can bring to people, that little bit of magic when you went into a card store when you were younger. The shelves felt like miles long, full to the brim, full of cards, and that sort of magic I want to kind of imitate to obviously the virtual side. And yeah, always let me know, give me feedback about how I'm doing, what I'm doing pricing wise. Something just moved in the corner. I'm home alone. That's scary. But yeah, please let me know. I'm always open to feedback, whether that's the way the site works, the accessibility, price points, loads of other things, whether I'm stocking stuff or not stocking stuff. Obviously I'm a new store, so there is limitations to how much I can bring in so quickly. I do kind of go with the core brands first, and I will expand out, but obviously where there is opportunity and a market, I am more than happy to provide. So yeah, let me know what you're interested in TCG wise, what you're collecting, or what you're playing at the moment. On that note, I've also been doing this, where going through buying a bulk of TCG. I don't know if you can see here because the camera. This is obviously One Piece. I've been going through creating slots of 4 for deck building purposes, so I can start selling play sets, because I think it's really important I support the play area of TCG. One Piece is one just I get because I love the anime, I love the TCG and how it plays, and it's what I know kind of most in terms of functionality right now. So I also had a ton of bulk around from when I've been opening packs. So what I've been doing in my free time, I've recently finished Ghost of Tsushima on the PlayStation. I've got a platinum on that one. Just a little flex there. Surprisingly easy to do. So I've just started Borderlands 4 now. I'm actually enjoying that. Borderlands is one of the guilty pleasures that I have because it has Borderlands 3, Handsome Jack Collection, didn't fully deliver, in my opinion, of course. So having played 4 for about 5 hours now, it does seem to capture a bit of kind of like Borderlands 1 and 2. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how that story develops. And the gameplay seems fun, seems like refreshing. Although I don't like that performance is capped at 30 FPS on the PlayStation 5. It's 2025, guys. You know, this is a billion dollar company. Potentially, I don't know. Also, this is a side note, probably from a collector's perspective and kind of, I suppose, a singles perspective. I don't know if you've noticed recently, but like, you know, your Charizard Vs and things like that from like say Darkness Ablaze, man, they go up in price. I've recently been seeing like PSA 10s. I know it's obviously graded in the PSA, but like they're going for like 75, 80 quid a pop. Like when you're looking at it back in the day, you used to get it, sell it for maybe £1, £2, £3, and you were able to kind of like obviously move stock, popular Pokemon of course, but it got me thinking, what if you create like a time capsule for your kind of strong IP? And again, this is from a selling perspective, not collecting perspective, guys. So obviously, you know, please don't jump at me in terms of Scalper 5000 or anything like that. But it's just more an experimental thought. If you had a time capsule for these kind of strong IP Pokemon, you know, Charizards, Gardevoirs, Lucarios, you know, but like on the V level or the EX level, because you look at it from way back when, you know, 10, 12 years ago, and them Sun and Moon XY cards, you know, obviously Diamond Pearl, so on and so forth, them EXs and things like that, they do fly up in price. And I guarantee, and I was out the game at that point again, I only rejoined Pokemon, you know, 2020 around Darkness Ablaze area, which was something I was looking at. People must have thought that these cards, you know, must not be worth much in the long run. Now, obviously, we need to take into account there had been 2 booms after that, and people might not have took grading as seriously, so supply and demand model, of course. But when you're looking at a Charizard V from Darkness Ablaze, which was not a popular set, people weren't really too impressed with that. It was a bit of a dip, and they're going for like 75 quid. It only gets me thinking about, is there something that I could think of that could be an option here? And yeah, I'm thinking it with a business hat on, you know, I just want to restate that. But could I create like a collector portfolio for an experiment, pop them V cards in, and almost put them in a time capsule, forget about them for however many years, let's just sort of say a 5-10 year window, and see how much they appreciate, given the fact that they are not a desirable card right now. When you open up and you get an EX or a V, you do look and kind of go, if it doesn't have play potential, it kind of just goes into either your master collection, a nice to have because you might like the Pokemon and collect it, which is more than valid, or you would look to sell it kind of on that pennies of the dollar comparison to where they are 5 years ago, because I think Darkness Ablaze was 2020. There could be something, you know. I do have a couple of these kind of types of cards already that you kind of do in your whatnot shows and all that kind of jazz. So I might just kind of pop them to a side and forget about them, because it could just be fun to see what happens. So in other TCG news, there has been, well, I say quite a big deal happening with Konami. Yu-Gi-Oh have finally announced full art cards are coming to English. So to my knowledge, and this is testing my knowledge because I've not really looked into it too much yet, I believe Speed Duel in Japan already have full art cards. Now I believe Speed Duel in English will get full art cards initially, but they've not said full art cards for Yu-Gi-Oh would be off the table. Now, this is exciting for me because Yu-Gi-Oh is my first love when it comes to TCG. You know, it got me into it. Dark Magician, Yu-Gi-Oh, the anime. You know, it was and still is probably my favorite kind of TCG. If I kind of look down at heart, maybe not my favorite brand anymore, but it really holds dear to my heart. So if I can get things like, you know, a Dark Magician, Blue Eyes, you know, full art cards, and I'm talking from a collector perspective, but also obviously from a fan perspective too. That paired with the Genesis new format, you know, Konami could be looking at saving Yu-Gi-Oh! And I'm not going to claim to know the fan base or understand them entirely, but apart from the subreddits I read, you know, Ruxin that, you know, I follow and watch just to understand the community a bit more. Now I'm getting into a business like side of Yu-Gi-Oh! It doesn't seem good, and the reaction from these two announcements have been well received from what I gather. It'd be really interesting to see how they follow through with this and whether they do get a really interesting, you know, I tell you what, I'm not a fan and I don't play the game in any way, shape or form now, and it's got me excited. And that is from a fan perspective, not just a business perspective. Like, I don't look at this and I see money instantly. I think there will need to be a good few sets come out and it really starts to kind of use that momentum, and that will propel Yu-Gi-Oh! Hopefully back into the forefront, because I think I mentioned it a few weeks ago that One Piece, I think, has overtook Yu-Gi-Oh! In that kind of play space. And whether One Piece obviously stays in there, because I think One Piece obviously has the capacity to either carry on being a staple, but it is massively dependent on how the anime does and when it stops, because we've kind of saw that with, you know, Naruto and that IP and, you know, other kind of cards that relate to that. You know, you'd probably get the occasional like collaboration that you with, like, say, you know, Union Arena, you know, Y Schwartz and other collaborations with TCG providers, but it just doesn't happen as much anymore, and that's because you kind of get a stagnation with characters. You can't really introduce new characters to the canon events because that would upset the brand, the IP, and other things. You kind of do write yourself into a hole. Yu-Gi-Oh! Was really good about making it about the monsters and then adding a storyline with, you know, Yami Yugi, you know, Jaden, and so on and so forth, with all the other characters that kind of came through, but it was always about the monsters. And that's what the success kind of led them to be, you know, successful around there. You know, it's one reason why Ash Ketchum also never aged with Pokemon, is because if you stopped with Ash Ketchum, there is probably a lot of people being introduced to the brand that kind of drops off. And that's what, you know, kept Pokemon at the top of the game and has kept them at the top of the game for so long, just keeping the brand recognizable. You can't really do that with manga, or at least Oda has a specific plan in mind, whereas Nintendo kind of had that as a forever plan, whereas One Piece is a bit different. But, you know, that I could be wrong. And for the sake of argument, I do hope it's wrong. I want One Piece to last forever. It's one of my favorite. It's probably my favorite media that I've ever consumed, and that is pretty confidently said from me. I'm so privileged to be around when that's happening, but that's me just being a weeb, so I'll move on from that. And of course, you'll have seen it everywhere this week, and you know, you can't go into a TCG space video without hearing about this crash. And, you know, I loosely say crash, it's just the market slowing down around this period, and when the market slows down, prices do drop. And, you know, I do think this is a good thing. I think it's a good place for the market to be, and, you know, I'm more looking at people scalping and things like that. They'll start to probably panic in that space. You know, the investor bros, like, this is a buying window now. If you see a dip, and as I mentioned, you know, if you're seeing things like a 10% dip in a crash, like, that's a good sign of how strong the market is. And a bad sign in the same way when you're already paying above retail still for booster boxes that are technically still in print, which is wild. I can't confidently say, and I'm not qualified to say, that this is a market crash. I've never seen one myself. I've only started entering within a bull market, and that is, still a bull market in my opinion. When you look at it from like a economic perspective, in which I'm also not qualified to comment on, but I will. I'll still create a clickbaity title because that's how the algorithm likes to work. Sorry guys if you did click on that. But this for me is, a really interesting way to stress test, people who love the hobby for it being, cards, like, just want cards and you want people to enjoy things versus this is a quick book. And this is why, Eddy's Emporium is a brand, it's a website. I want this to be somewhere that nurtures TCG and its space and the people that want to kind of communicate and, collaborate with their love and passion for all things TCG. Even if I don't fully understand it, I want to create that space for people to be able to chat about it. And I also want to learn about it because, things like, I say it now, I know Magic the Gathering's been around forever, but I'm loving learning about Magic from all my friends who play it and have played it for a long time and who are just getting into it. It's great, and I really love playing the game. It's one of the nicest games I've played that kind of feels close to an early 2000s TCG, not too heavy digital in terms of the way that it plays. Playing Commander games with your friends, around 4 people, sat at a table laughing, suddenly becoming a threat, everyone turning on you, suddenly feels like Monopoly. It's great. But it certainly is a interesting time, and just keep your head on your shoulders. Don't panic too much. I won't get too carried away with the expectation that everything's going to drop down to retail prices. Unfortunately, as much as I'd love to, because that means supply would become available for me to get into the Pokemon space and start giving things for retail and buying things for retail. That's not going to happen anytime soon, especially with the amount of sets that are coming out. At least from a supply perspective, if things became available at retail, I'd be buying them for myself, not for me taking away from people off the shelf, because that's just not the right thing to do. It's not how I want Eddy's Emporium to be run. So yeah, let me know what you think about the crash and all the other things that I've chatted about, because it is pretty interesting, and I'm around 20 minutes now, so I'll wrap this up. It's been lovely chatting with you as always. I will probably be releasing a few more videos of, just me releasing some of the grade stuff that's on my store. Obviously, I've not been able to edit them yet. They'll be released probably while I'm on holiday, so you've got something to watch when I'm not able to do the weekly vlog. I might post a little video just to say hi, maybe open a pack in Iceland, something silly like that. But, I'm looking forward to the week away, and I'm always going to miss Eddy's Emporium and obviously all your lovely faces. But yeah, I'll catch you on the next video, and yeah, have a lovely rest of your week. Ciao.